Alright, Star Wars fans and YouTubers, I'm back. This video is going to be dedicated to army building. This is stuff Hasbro's done in the past, what they're doing in the present, and what they should do in the future for army building collectors like myself. I'm going to start out here with a classic Imperial officer. I've got three variants of these guys. They first started coming out in the Power of the Jedi collection. That's around the turn of the millennium, around 2000. The first one here has black hair and blue eyes. A couple of people have actually told me he looks a lot like Nicolas Cage. They came out with two different variants. One has blonde hair and blue eyes, and one has brown hair, and I think he has blue eyes as well, a much smaller head. But anyway, this is a classic example of how Hasbro can make different head sculpts and put it on the same officer, and it actually worked very well. Even though these figures are somewhat dated with articulation and such, I still use them as a good part of my backbone for my army building. They make good shuttle pilots and a lot of good background scene Imperials in general. Now moving on here, I've got the current Imperial Navy Commander, and a lot of people question why Hasbro came out with this figure. They were telling me, oh yeah, you know, the Death Star Trooper used to be called the Death Star Trooper, or the Death Squad Commander, or Star Destroyer Commander, if you're a Kenner fan. You know, he was just fine. You know, they came out with the 30th anniversary one, and everybody, you know, a lot of people ask me, you know, why did they need a second one? Well, basically, that figure sucked. He was articulate, but a lot of times the build of his uniform, especially the hard plastic tunic, defeated his articulation. His legs, you couldn't move well. He was tall and gangly. He couldn't stand on his own. That's why I barely used him at all in any of my army building setups. They basically needed to redo that figure, and they have. I'm not putting down the 30th anniversary as a whole, just that particular figure. They have a lot of good figures from that collection. One thing that I wish they would address, I know this guy's somewhat new, but if they would come out with different head sculpts for the guy. They've got a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy here. If they would come out with one or two different head sculpts, that would be great. What also a lot of original trilogy fans want is a gray uniform Death Star, excuse me, what do they call him now? They call him the Imperial Navy Commander, a gray uniformed Imperial Navy Commander. They've changed his name so many times, but that's the way the original Kenner figure was, and a lot of people would like to see a modern version of that with the gray uniform. Moving on here, I've got the Imperial Scanning Crew. This guy came out during the Legacy Collection, and they did promise a second head sculpt for us as well as different scanning equipment. See a scanning equipment in the background? And, you know, Hasbro did promise that, and they never delivered. But I was kind of waiting for it. I got a couple of these guys. I was hoping for the other scanning equipment. What you really could do if you wanted to is I think the OTC collection in 2004 does have the other half of the scanning equipment. You could order those guys and get the box. But basically I was waiting for a different head sculpt, and Hasbro never delivered. Also, there's some guys who look a lot like these guys on the Executor in episode 5 and 6. I was hoping with the first Vintage collection that they will come out with an Executor battle pack. Excuse me, maybe they also could repack the Admiral Oslo figure, and maybe come out with a slightly retooled guy and with a different head sculpt, but they never delivered. They had a lot of good Imperial stuff in the Vintage collection, but I was actually hoping for more. Moving on here, we've got the classic TIE Fighter pilot. He's a redo also from the OTC collection of 2004, a much needed redo. I was afraid when they came out with this guy that he would kind of be a copy of the AT-AT driver, kind of big with an oversized helmet, but basically this is the same size as the OTC guy. The OTC collection guy basically has it spot on for the look of the movie. They're just not as articulate as the current one. This guy does have a removable helmet. With the TIE Fighter pilot helmet on, you really can't see his face, although I wouldn't mind, you know, having a couple different versions of his face. I think they've come out with one or two, slightly different for the Empire. But and a couple of them were actually disguised as rebels as well. I know an earlier version of him, they did Biggs Darklighter, and I think they did Hobbs as well. Or Hobby. Excuse me, Hobby. But one suggestion I do have for Hasbro is I'm a big Expanded Universe fan, and I know a couple times in the Expanded Universe, Wedge Antilles went undercover in the Empire disguised as Colonel Roat. Maybe some of you can remember that from the novels. I was hoping they could make a TIE Defender with a Wedge Antilles disguised as Colonel Roat exclusive figure. I think that would sell well and be a good nod to Expanded Universe fans like myself, although I don't think Hasbro will do it. But anyway, I am happy with the current TIE Fighter pilot, and since he wears a helmet, it's not a big issue with me. Moving on, I've got the AT-ST driver. Now, the last time you've been able to actually get this guy on cardback was the Power of the Force 2 collection in the late 1990s. It's been about 15 years. Otherwise, he's just been an exclusive with something. They've repacked exclusives with the 30th Anniversary Ultimate Battle Packs. They did them in the Legacy collection with the new Walker. And when they repacked the Walker, they finally had a new, resculpted guy. I was hoping Hasbro would follow the example they did with the Imperial Sand Trooper with a dewback. They came out with an exclusive dewback late in the Legacy Collection with a newly sculpted Sand Trooper, and then they came out with that same Sand Trooper on cardback in the second wave of the Vintage Collection. I was hoping they would follow suit with that, but they never did. One thing they did kind of correct us on, they did help us. They made an Endor ADST crew, which is pretty much the same uniform but with a different helmet. But this is only exclusive to Kmart. So they have at least somewhat addressed the issue of army building. I've got the guys right here. There's two different face sculpts. Here's one of them. Here's another one. I'm going to try to get this review done tonight, actually, as well. So they have addressed that some. But anyway, this is a good example of what I think they should do for army building collectors in the future. If you agree or disagree with me, please tell me. Maybe you have some insight into the comments as well. But in the meantime, this is Preem signing out. And as always, thank you for tuning in.